they've known is gone within moments. They come down. The only thing that would look unusual, apart from just bare landscape, would be these stone circles. And they would have saw two things, I think. This is part of what the wave does, but it's, in a sense, a message from our people. They're almost like gravestones. So the idea that they'd worship those stone circles, but also when I'm talking before about there's a Western civilization says things are artificial or things are natural. Yeah. I think with the Aboriginal people, that demarcation wasn't there. So they didn't really care whether nature had made the stone circles or they had, because now it was theirs to be custodians over. And as a scientist can look at nature and see how a bumblebee moves, and then from that derive science and derive religion and spirituality, I think that's what the originals did. They said, okay, these are patterns, these are fractals created by this chaos, but the order it's left behind, its signature, is this tight order. You know, in the sense where, when we said before that you have the great sense of loss of what we missed out on, what remains, your sense of loss is like the standing stones of what's gone. The standing stones they find is what's gone. And if
doesn't that blow out the theory that it's 12,000 years old? No,
because every 500 years there would have been these tsunamis, apparently, because this one was made by a meteorite impact, but apparently it happens naturally when you have continental shifts, shells dropping.
Major volcanoes,
that sort of stuff. So the standing stone arrangement, like the people who constantly evolved and changed, may have constantly been evolving and changing over that 500 years. Each time it's impacted in one way or another. So when I said before, if you want something to last, make it stone. Fantastic. But even stone can be moved around. So I think they just accepted that, even that cataclysm as part of the story, a reset button of nature. Okay.
Is there chevrons in the landscape along here to back up the suck back of the tidal wave, or not? Maybe not along here, maybe, but down further.
Well, the only thing that what I've got to show is two things that I know from here, but based on what I looked at the geologist, and he said there were two things you'd find. One is that you'd find, and this is the first thing that sparked his belief in this tsunami, a more recent one, and started to date it, was that he'd find when he was doing some other geological studies, big giant rocks that would just look like
placed there. Yeah.
Looked like big boulders, like the size of buses. It looked like they'd just been picked out of the water or picked up from somewhere and dropped along the coast, where there was no natural explanation for how you have these giant rocks. What you have here at the Serpent Mound is giant stones, which I showed photos of, and they're as big as buses. And then from those big rocks, you have the circular patterns, the snake-like spirals coming out of. Also, what you'd have if you have a massive wave striking inland, as it washes over the lower hills and comes out, you would make conical shapes.
It would go up and
when
make
we
a
talk
conical
about
shape.
Mount Shikogan, and you say, is it
a pyramid?
Is it a pyramid? I think it is pyramid shaped. I think it was shaped by the people. I think it was shaped by nature. I think Australia Stonehenge is interplay, and the sites here between nature, the dynamic processes of nature, and a dynamic civilization that managed to coexist. And so I think that as we see faces in the clouds, they saw faces in the rocks, and I think they could argue that they were faces of their own people, the spirits of their deceased. So I think, and are they wrong? Well, I think in a quantum level they're not wrong. So I don't disagree.
Well, everything and nothing at the same time.
Everything and nothing. So my theory is that the Stonehenges themselves were naturally produced. So they're not artificial, but I believe they are artificially worked. But if someone out there in the audience says, "Oh, but I thought extraterrestrials, might have formed it," well, what moved the meteorite? If it's my theory on what caused the creation is a cosmogenic theory, that it was actually created from the cosmos. Now, someone could argue, well, what that meteorite took a path. What path? What decided that path? So that whatever is
technically Jupiter,
but before it even got to our solar system, maybe.
Yeah. Where did it come from?
Where did it come from? And it's funny how we get the oldest meteorites has been found in Australia.
Yes,
it's interesting.
Yeah, well, there's it's a podcast topic that I'm going to dig into. However, essentially there's a impact crater, I think it's in Western Australia, that they believe that turned us from a ice planet into a habitable planet.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
So
we definitely have a relation with meteorites, as we've also told from other narratives and other tribes.
Well, when I talk to people about meteorites and stuff, I'm like, well, let's just go to the biblical sense. What is Armageddon? Armageddon is rocks coming from the sky, volcanoes, firestorms, all the things that happen if a big rock comes from the sky and slams into the ocean. You know what I mean? Continental shifts, volcanoes, firestorms.
It doesn't take a big one, but so you've got the people here who talk about light in the sky made their people. So if I said to you that the tsunami is a really great way to generate people, you'd say probably not. But I think in their way of being, they could justly say, well, the tsunami made the stones, which is in a sense the egg of the fractal of our past people and is our people. And so the light in the sky did make our people. They constantly remade our people. Yeah. They're constantly being reborn and being remade to survive for 150,000 longer years.
Yeah, I think it's longer. I think every turn of the spade can change history, as we know.
Yeah, well, if it's true that the scale stones that are on this the coastal side, the ones that has the serpent spirals, if those scale stones are what I think they are, which is petrified wood, then you could argue that the native population picked them up, all over the place and gathered them to that location, and that just took time. Or were those, if they were made to be used, then we're going back millions of years.
So even the ballast theory, though, doesn't that get thrown out if you throw a tsunami in?
Well, no, because the ballast, just because it was formed and happened in 1640, doesn't mean that there weren't possibly boats still coming. And the ballast, the very fact that it's on this portion of the river, could be because it was gathered. Because it could have been much longer, much up further. Because we're talking about 200 metres where the ballast is. Yeah. So possibly that size rocks. It's sort of like when you look for gold and you get a filter through it. Panning for gold. The different sizes have different weights of different actions. So the fact that you have a congregation ballast could be the argument for a wave as well as an argument for not a wave. That's the problem with everything I say. A lot of it could be one or the other.
Yeah, and look, I'm as you know, we've been having discussions all day, and I like to explore all perspectives and all avenues of how we do it. And look, that's an interesting perspective with the spiraling stones and stuff like that. And look, there is evidence. As I say, the last podcast I did was on the fact that there's tsunami evidence in the Gulf of Carpentaria, represented in chevrons in the landscape that are literally 20 kilometres. The
thing I think which will disprove or prove the theory that I'm not a geologist would be, you'd think if you have salt here for 3 weeks and it's drying up inland in low.
It'd be in core samples or something.
There should be in core samples. Yeah. I haven't yet to see. You think you'd have like a salt bed, like a layer of salt, just from the drying seawater in certain catchment areas around here.
Yeah, because a wave that large, as you say, it would take a few weeks to
dissipate,
and it would actually leave a layer of sediment.
I would think so, and I would think that also that there'd be some parts where it just had to evaporate. There was a splashover. It can't recede.
Well, yeah, as you say, if it's like we started the discussion with the Mount Warning shaped like a pyramid, theoretically the wave is like brushed up and broken against the top of that hill. You would think that there would be, there would be salt brush or something to do with that.
Yeah, I just think when you have anything over there where it's anything inland where you've got a trough, you've got a saddle, you've got a valley that's filled with salt water. If it took weeks or months for it to dry out,
there would be evidence. There'd be geological evidence within core samples.
But no one I know has done that research. And the fellow who has this theory, his name I'm not even going to say because I can't remember it, but it's on my website. And he's proper professor or whatever you call those people. He's on the inside. He was talking about the East Coast, and I think more from Byron Bay southwards rather than, I don't think he did any particular studies here.
Yeah,
so there's a lot to study. What I'd like to do is get a piece of the Stonehenge and see about what we can work out about what its composition.
Yeah.
That'd be and also there's so many different types of stones. It'd be interesting to see, can we track down their original location? They seem to be able to do it on these TV shows when they say, well, this rock came from this place. When it's
well, you should. Well, that was one of the. Well, that's a question I had that I didn't ask you. Is that if the stone was quarried, where did it come from?
Well, there's nowhere within kilometres that
type of stone
existed.
That stone existed.
But the thing is, Stephen Evans Strong, what they claim to be the stones are basalt columns.
Yeah, with a granite covering or limestone covering.
Yeah, which he says that at 1939 they would have said, okay, well that's, they would have mistaken basalt for sandstone.
Yeah, sandstone. Sorry,
sandstone. That's right. But I don't think they would have mistaken it.
I don't think so either.
I think that the people, even the farmers would have known that's a different type of stone from different stone.
And so I mean the type of stones that you took photos of around the area and stuff like that looks like granite or limestone. Yeah. That's not.
Yeah, no, it's a there's a special name. It's a type of lithic sandstone. It means it's a rough sandstone.
It's a rough sandstone.
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. So it basically means that the formation of the crystals, because it got rushed. Mm-hmm. The process of geological process of formation due to it being near a volcano meant that the displacement allowed larger crystals to grow in it.
Yes.
So there's some reason,
there's a geological profile that it adheres to.
There is an explanation and it does adhere to it. But yeah, the Stonehenge, from what I understand, was not made from basalt. It was made from sandstone. But then you have so many different other types of stones on the lower mound, what they call the Mound of the Five Kings, which is the 2,000-ton mound, which is near the base of Stonehenge. That's got heaps of different specimens of stones, and some are perfect spheres almost, and some are very angular.
Yeah, I think there is photos of the pyramidal stones
I'll pick up a white stone that's like a pyramid shape, and then I'll put it down and pick up a red stone that's a ball. Very different types of material.
And is it so? I know from some of the other sites that I'm learning about is that the tribes would come from all over Australia, but they would bring an offering.
Yeah, well, that was part of what made it a universal site, United Nations of places, because the idea that no one could lay claim to the land was part of the idea that when a tribe would come, they'd leave one of their stones here. And so every successive corroboree, every initiation, hit the thing again, as they came, they would bring their own the stone from their land.
Yeah.
So if someone said, whose henge is this or whose mound is this, everyone could rightly claim mine.
Yeah.
Because a part of my land is now on that hill.
Yeah, it's like the old tribal thing where they would make the arrows and everyone would give the arrows to everybody else. So when you killed the beast, it wasn't your arrow that did it, so it was
everybody's.
Everybody's.
Exactly.
Yeah. You just draw from the pile. It's nothing to do with anyone else.
Yeah, and so what I'm trying to do is look at, so I'm doing two things now with the Stonehenge research. One is I'm trying to get more back to the start.
Yeah.
Really just until I'm super happy with the first encounter, how to describe the first encounters between the white people, which could be second encounter if we look at it in the bigger picture.
Yeah. Because so you talk just quickly second encounter, because I know. So from what I understand, Egyptians, Chinese, potentially Roman. I know they found Roman coins and stuff up north. You know what I mean? Like
and there's also meant to be a Chinese coins here.
Yeah.
And Mount Shikogan, the pyramid shape one that's close to Stonehenge. I was told years and years ago that before, when I first got here, that when I said that's a weird looking hill, and the stories I was told was that there was meant to be a Chinese a shaft that the Chinese explorers had dug directly downwards at the base of the mountain somewhere, and once been found. So that's interesting, and what they were digging for, I'm not quite sure about.
So is that are those mountains on public land or private land?
Private land, but they do once a year a walk up to Mount Shikogan. You can do it. You can pay like $30 and you can get to go up there. So, and I've heard that up there there's stone arrangements too, but I don't know whether they're being made by people who are visiting and they just want to mark that they've been there.
Yeah,
which is essentially the whole thing's about anyway.
This is what we're doing anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, that's on private property.
Yeah.
That's the thing in Australia, in Europe, they make sure private property has access ways where between one property and another they'll actually have like a path that you can ride your horse through. But in Australia,
the boundaries are solid.
The boundaries are solid. One fence meets another fence, and that blocks off whole areas.
So I mean, because like my next question would be, my next thought was let's get a team together and scour those three hills. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I tried to. What happened was I had a team ready to go to the Australian Stonehenge in about 2014, and what I didn't know was because of me, which is good, I think, it became listed as a sacred site in 2014. So the time, so basically lost the history. I tell everybody, it has a smoke ceremony, it gets in the news again, then it gets listed. And once it got listed, that's when they came down, and that's why people were told they can't go there, and you'll get fined huge amounts if you do anything near it. And so all the fear came in to the property owners there. They'll all get in trouble if anyone goes there. So that happened in 2014. So in a sense, I stopped people by going there, by telling people, because then it became. But I did get a team together, and they were going from the University in Lismore, geologists, and they were very keen to just go there and get samples and do it all. And just but because it became a sacred site, they can't take a speck of sand from there.
Okay, right. And is it had? Yeah, well, that's a conversation we can have off the mic.
Another,
that's a conversation we can have off the mic.
But I've been close a few times to try, because I want to go. There are some people who talk about Australian Stonehenge who have this big idea that academia, the universities are evil, and society is controlled by this evil corporation, whatever. There's this idea that they won't let us know, and it's all this big battle going on. But I think if they didn't think they were going to get the flack, they'd come down and they would bring it into their science. I think they'd be happy to come.
Absolutely.
And they'd really want to just go and say, hey, let's do our testing on this.
And look, and it could be just getting some freelance people that have the knowledge and the understanding and the technology to do it correctly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Well,
there's a lot we can find out if we all went there without touching anything. There's a lot we can do with depth sounding to work out.
Yeah, ground penetrating radar, that sort of stuff. Drones, LiDAR, that sort of stuff. We can do a lot of stuff.
We could do a lot. There's a lot more to learn without even,
without
with drones.
Yeah.
We could literally be not there, and we could find out a lot now.
Yeah.
And that'd be interesting. That's what we should be doing.
Absolutely. So, before we move on to where you're at now, is there any other sort of theoretical things you wanted to mention or different ideas?
Well, I can tell you what I think, but I'm not going to why I think.
No, that's fine. That's
okay.
Yeah, no,
only because there's too much to explain
absolutely.
where I get to the conclusion. So here's some conclusions without any backup.
Yep. Okay. So this is playing with ideas, but conclusions you've come to using the research and the stuff you found.
Exactly. If you held me at one question, you said, "Okay, Richard, tell me more about that one." I could provide you with what I believe to be the evidence for it.
Yep.
But that would be a long time. But I'm happy to do it. But that's what a book does.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that's the reason behind the book. You will go into detail into this sort of stuff. And again, look, I know we're nearing the end. I just really appreciate your time.
That's okay. So I think there was an advanced. I think this is just on the record, but not that I can prove it, that there was an advanced civilization.
So we think, because I do too.
Okay. But I'll probably part ways when I describe this. But I think that there was an advanced civilization. I think that it embraced nanotechnology.
Okay.
So, do I need to quickly mention that?
No, nanotech's fine.
Nanotech's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think it was super nanotech. I think if you go to the highest level, I think it was that high. And I think it ran for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't just bounded by Earth.
Yep.
Okay. And I think that this nanotechnology, when it was all nanotech, where everything was where the whole universe was just nanotech, inside and out. Mm-hmm. So every cell has its own nuclear-powered, fusion-powered nanotech, every body cell. Okay, so it's there. That to do that, people were scared of cyberware now. Oh my God, I'm not going to be a human being.
Yep.
But that this civilization had got to the point where, because the way they grew was much lower than ours, and they weren't fighting nature, they weren't digging down, they weren't interested in dinosaurs and digging up the dead, they weren't interested in digging holes and getting metal out, they weren't interested in burning dead dinosaurs. They decided to just go for solar and go for a slower way. It took a long time for them to form. So they didn't accelerate. So we accelerated our technology in a sense. We were playing catch up. But over a long, long time, they got to I think, an intergalactic level. But then I think it switched off.
Something happened.
Something happened, and I think it turned off. And I think one of the ones that I always like to quote is that, the cataclysm, the great cataclysm, is, if you read the Sumerian text, is that they knew the cataclysm was coming and it was going to be that bad that they fled the planet. There's no other way to interpret the writing. So, the Vimanas and that sort of stuff in India. But the Vimanas, interesting, that's a different story. However, there's evidence, loose evidence to suggest without any concrete that we have, in 6,000 or 7,000 generations of humans, if you take it out to 300,000 years, which is the oldest human skeleton, that's roughly 8,000 generations. In 6, we went from horsebacks to rockets. You're telling me in 7,900 generations we did nothing? Yeah, well, we know at least just to counteract that, we know for at least maybe 150,000 years, a certain civilization could behave in one way, which may not be, show us what, they could enable us to come here and take over everything, so you never touched the land, So we have to look at how maybe civilization looks at that. But I believe that when it switched off, when the nanotechnology switched off, and I think this happened about maybe 14,000 years ago, around that time, I think that everything just fell. Everything just became dust.
Okay.
So imagine now, if everything we have now, all the data around us just turned to dust, what would happen to us? We'd probably break our legs, because we'd fall through to this flight. We'd be from this floor to the next floor.
Yeah.
We hit the ground.
Yeah.
And so within a moment, most people in the world, and all the worlds, are dead. Okay. There's some survivors, those who were on the ground floor. Okay,
the survivors of the cataclysm. I mean,
and I think that explains to me why and I know people say aliens exist, but I know why I haven't seen alien the way I would say is because I think the reset button happened everywhere simultaneously around the universe, and I think it means that when we have this sense that there's someone out there, it's us out there. That we've got other versions of us.
That escaped.
That escaped. Well, I think, survivors. I think there are survivors, but they're at the technology level where we're at too now. Maybe some are a little bit maybe some of them died out, maybe some of them got a bit quicker than us, maybe some ones are taking the long road where they're not actually mining like we are.
Yeah.
Different ways of recovering the technology.
Yeah.
And I think the way we're recovering the technology is two ways. One way is we're becoming aware of these Stonehenges. Like, you know how there was stones right outside of the hall? People pay $50 to hear me talk.
And there were stones outside the hall.
And there were stones that tell them
You didn't tell me that, and I didn't realise that.
Yeah, but you didn't realise it because it was invisible to you.
Yeah.
They were there, and you would have had to have seen them in your subconscious.
A lot of that stuff is hiding in plain sight. That's the other thing I understand.
Yeah, so a lot of the answers, a lot of what we're looking for is there already. We just have to be receptive and open and human enough to get back to seeing that. The more human we can become, the more we're going to understand that technology.
Yes.
Because it's human, that technology, in a sense. It's as much humanity, it's like a living hammer, this technology.
Yeah.
So I think that other civilizations are scrambling all around the universe to get back to where we were. And I don't know where we are, but it does explain why we have that sense that we're not alone. But also explains why we don't see the spaceships landing as much as we'd think. But also explains why, that we have that. We don't even feel like sometimes we're alien to our own world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Well, and if you break us down as far as the structure of our bones, we are literally made of stardust. You know what I mean? That there's within our bones is stuff from extraterrestrial origin.
And it's interesting that I didn't know this. And you can check your face on this. I didn't know. I thought gold was formed in the earth, but apparently it crashes into the earth. It's not natural.
I thought it was formed in volcanoes, to be honest.
We should check that because I've seen it. I know that it runs in certain bands of quartz, and I thought it was formed naturally. But something I've read and I checked said it was actually formed.
Well, someone out there have a look and let us know. It's something I might look into as well.
Let us know, because I understand, and also I'd be interested in this, where I know that the largest deposits of gold was China and Australia.
Yes.
And it's interesting, we know how much the Egyptians revered gold, and we know that their capstones and their pyramids could be metallic.
Yep.
We know that a lot of the minarets from the Muslims came, decorated from material salvaged from the Egyptians.
Yep.
And that, once again, very reflective or golden. And, there's a lot. Anyway, so that's my big theory on this.
That's your big theory,
That's the big theory, and I think that those survivors said, what are we going to do? I want to think because within half an hour, that'd be a memory. Within 2 days, you'd think that was in the same vision, where you were if it all collapsed. Because you'd be dealing with dying, starving, feeling pain and shock.
Well, this is the thing, and this is what I've got a podcast that hasn't been done yet, but it's basically trying to grasp the cataclysm that happened 13,000 years ago. Continent-wide wildfires. 400-foot tidal waves.
The worst, because
you can't even. We have no concept.
Yeah, it would have been total chaos.
And whoever is left just scrambling purely just for survival.
Just trying to stay sane.
Yeah.
And so, but I think there were two things I would have done. So if I was a survivor, and I was one of the few that had my thoughts together, and I thought, my God, I'm about to, everything I learned about my huge cosmic concept of the universe is, all the sciences that I've been downloading is all going to go.
Yeah.
And I've got to communicate something to these next generations that will survive what has happened, I'd be doing two things. One thing, I'd be getting the dust of the nanotechnology, which is iron powder all over the place, rusting, and I'd be painting them on my children's foreheads and saying, remember this, these lines are important. And then you have the Aborigines with their ochre all over their bodies, which they use in their ceremonies. The other thing I'd be doing is grabbing quartz and putting it in their skin, saying, listen, really get this is important, remember this thing. And also grabbing any stones I've got and making lines with them and making circles.
And building structures and stuff like that.
That actually then start to... We talk about the properties of quartz stones and how it could, has magnetic fields. I think they started to try to keep remnants of what they'd lost. Like we are going through this thing now where it's like, okay, so there's a Stonehenge, so much is destroyed, but can we do anything? And how can we grow to understand it?
What's left,
I think it's a story that's always been told.
And I do find that it's a repeating story over and over and over again. I think that's the if you look at it, if you step back, look at the different cultures all over the globe, look at it objectively, look at the symbols, look at the stone, look at the circles, look at what's going on. It's all very similar. And you look at the religious story, look at the culture, look at it. Within every single one of those is a common story or common myth or legend. And they echo all over the globe.
Beyond what we would think traditionally, there was any communications about it.
Absolutely, and tens of thousands of years. I mean, look, the nanotech is interesting, and I can.
I choose it because it's a simple explanation, not because it's correct.
Yes. I mean, my personal, and I don't have a better answer. However, I think the tech that we used to use harnessed the energy of the planet through sound, vibration, potentially anti-gravity, magnets, that sort of stuff. It was variations of that. And that's how they move the stone. You know what I mean? When you're moving 50-ton megaliths and you're putting them on top of a 300-foot pyramid, how else are you going to do it? Like if you had access to anti-gravity tech and stuff like that, you could just move it.
And you'd expect that. If you had a very highly advanced civilization that was also highly spiritual, you'd expect that when it imploded, when the disaster struck, there'd be people in different locations around the world who would have possessed the knowledge to have performed what we would think to be magical feats.
Yes.
When really it was actually just using like butterfly theory.
I think we described it earlier in the podcast because this is episode 90, 89 or 90. That it was like they had an iPad that still had a battery. You know what I mean? And everything was in the iPad. It's like, quick, we better just tell everybody everything we can tell them. Because as you would know yourself, is that in a lot of these megalithic sites, the deeper you dig, the better quality the work gets. It's not the other way around. It's not. The deeper you dig and the older you get, the better it is. And the newer stuff is of less of quality. So the knowledge was there when they started building it, and over the course of time...
I think in my picture, you've got so you have this cataclysm, whatever it was that caused it. So the Aboriginal people, I think, because it was a stable continent, because it was flat, because it withstood most of the disaster, had to act together enough to be the main repositories of knowledge. So I think they made a point of keeping abreast of what they'd lost and learning anew. So I think they became the masters of knowledge.
Okay, so let me add fuel to that theory. So, if you believe in the impact hypothesis, I can't even say. The impact stuff.
The idea,
right? That the idea is that North America, the ice shelves melted overnight, 2 weeks, 400 foot, all that stuff. Right? That's the running theory. You are correct in the fact that Australia is probably the furthest away from anything else like that. So let's pretend we have an advanced civilization, because I mean, every single religious story is they know it's coming. They've seen it. It's coming. They know it's coming, so they know it's coming. What are we going to do? We need to move all the knowledge and everything that whatever we've got left, to a stable place.
Yeah, I think like today we have.
It could be Australia. Yeah,
like today you have the military, the US with seed banks, deep in vaults in the US.
Yeah.
We have the US Library of Congress. They record their things on old vinyl discs.
Yeah.
Not Bakelite plastic, because you can scratch a needle. You can use a needle and scratch and hear a sound. So they don't store things. They store things to last. The most crucial information, is in part, and the best. And if you lose all methods of storage, you make sure you are very good at storytelling.
Yeah. Or stone. Build stuff out of massive stone.
Build stuff in oral tradition like the Druids and the Aboriginal people.
Yes.
And so I think what happened is Aboriginal people had most of the knowledge. So